If you're looking to escape the 9 to 5, how can you make sure that what you escape to isn't just the 9 to 5 all over again? That's what we talk about in this week's episode. I'm Jeremy Klein, and this is Change Work Life. Hello and welcome to Change Work Life, the podcast that's all about beating the Sunday evening blues and enjoying Mondays again. If you want to know how you can enjoy a more satisfying and fulfilling working life, you're in the right place. One of the perceived advantages of freelancing or starting your own business is that you can choose your own hours without being tied to the 9 to 5 working day. But what happens if, even as a freelancer, you find that you're still doing the 9 to 5 when that was what you were trying to escape in the first place? My guest this week is Judith Keys, who quit her job, moved to France and started her freelance business. She's recently started 2 new businesses, My Food in France and My Best Friend in France, through which she teaches people about French food and also helps them with the social and emotional impact of moving to and living in a different country. Judith, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.
So why don't you start by telling us a bit more about your 2 businesses? And in particular, I'm interested in finding out how you determined that they were needed and that there was demand for them.
I think I'll start with My Best Friend in France. It was something that came about through speaking with other people in my position, so other expats who have been living in France or who are thinking of making the move. And there are so many resources out there for anything to do with French admin, moving house or looking for a job in France, visa applications, all these things. There's so many resources. And I found that there was a real gap for social and emotional support, as you said in the intro there. It's such a massive move. It can be really exciting and really fun. And, you know, people are moving to live their dream. But it can also be quite a culture shock. Depends where you're moving from, but you know, the French are very different. There are lots of things to get used to, especially if you're moving from a big city back home to a small village here, which is what I did. I found myself quite lonely when I first got here, and I would have loved to have had a group of people to speak to, just to talk about life in general and not necessarily ask questions about, about practical things. I wanted something a little bit different. So I wanted to create a space for that, and that's what I've done. I've created an online space for now that people can come and share their experiences and ask for help in a slightly different way. And the My Food in France really came about with my love of food and wanting to do something a bit more creative and having a creative release and seeing a real change after COVID in terms of how things were happening a lot more online. And I really wanted to bring the Provençal food and the really amazing ingredients and the stuff that I use here in my day-to-day life to more people and talk about good food and good ingredients and how to feed your family. So, yeah.
I'm curious, what's the business model for My Best Friend in France? Is it a paid community, or does it generate income another way, or is it something that you've started and you're still looking into the ways that it can become a business rather than just a sort of like a hobby?
So there are a few different things in the pipeline. One thing at the moment is the free group. So there's a free Facebook group that everybody can come and join. And what I'm offering at the minute, which I love, is having a best friend in France in your pocket. So it's BFF in your pocket, and it's monthly Voxer support. So people can join me. It's like a walkie-talkie. It's like having a walkie-talkie on your phone. That's what Voxer is, if you haven't heard about it. So it's an app on your phone, and it acts just like a walkie-talkie. You can send messages, voice messages or text messages via that. And I've had a few clients through that so far, and it is fantastic. It's a place to share highs and lows, I think, with me. So that's what's been really fun about this project is people want to talk to me and moan about what's happening and say, oh, I'm having such a hard time, or I'm missing this, or, I'm finding life difficult in a certain way, but they're also sharing lots of really good wins, that they've finally spoken to someone at the cafe and they spoke in really good French and the person understood them, or, little everyday wins. And it means they get one-to-one contact with me and any time basically that they would like. So I love that. And I've also released some courses as well. I did a really fun Christmas countdown before the end of last year where I talked about Christmas in France and food in France and that type of thing. That was just a really fun little project. And at the moment, what I'm running is a course called Well Woman in France. And that was a really important one for me to do. It focuses on women's health and giving people who live here, expats, giving them a bit more control over their health and well-being here in France. When you come to a different country, not only do you have the language barrier, but you just have the general head in sand thing that we all have a little bit with not dealing with particular health issues. So I wanted to talk and teach people about how things work here in lots of different ways. So not just going to your GP, but, getting a dental appointment, going to a particular checkup that you might need to have, a breast screening, all that type of stuff. And also talk about fitness and health and well-being in lots of different areas, and do that. Give them lots of language stuff, but also give them, here's how it actually works. Here's what you can expect, and take them through the course. So we're just in the middle of running that at the minute. I'm running that with another business owner, Francesca Fleming, and she's fantastic. She does a lot of the language teaching on the course, and we have found it really fantastic. The feedback we're getting so far is really, really good. So yeah, just fantastic, Jeremy. I'm loving it.
Tell us a little bit about your early career. So sort of where did you start out? What were you working and what did that look like?
My first job was straight out of university, and it was a necessity job. I started as a secretary in a law firm in Edinburgh. I did my degree there, and I suppose the French part of my life has always been a thread that's run through it because I did a degree. I did my master's in French, Edinburgh. But I wanted to get a job as soon as I finished, so I ended up getting a temp job in this law firm. And I stayed there for 8 years. I moved up through the ranks and became a manager in that law firm, and I loved it. It was great. I enjoyed it. I worked with a really great team of people. It wasn't what I had dreamed of doing, obviously. I did it because it was, it was what you were supposed to do. I had a really good full-time permanent job, and I was able to buy my first house, and I was doing all the right things according to what society tells us anyway. But it wasn't, I just found myself in the end realizing, that it wasn't for me and I wanted a change.
And what did career progression look like? I mean, you mentioned that you became a manager. Did it reach a plateau, or was there more opportunity if you'd wanted it?
There was no more opportunity. So I reached a point where I couldn't move any further. So I watched all the lawyers around me go from, trainee to solicitor to associate to partner, and move up and up and up and up. And I reached a point that I couldn't move any further. And I think that was one of the big reasons I wanted to move, because my job became easy and it became a bit run of the mill, and I knew that I couldn't move any further. I'd gone through all the opportunities for development. I'd done different training courses to help me move into that role. And then once I was in the role, I did training courses on perfecting the role, and then there just was nowhere left to go. So I think that was a big catalyst in my decision to leave.
What was your employer saying to you, assuming that they were saying anything to you at this stage about personal development, professional development?
Well, this was around 2008, so not long after that. In the years following 2008, after the crash, there was, we didn't get any salary increases then. There was just lots of there's no money for development. We're not, they weren't investing in people as much as they had done before. So I think it was pretty much, you should be happy with having a job and then being in the position that you're in. That was very much what I felt anyway. I know I was respected and that people were happy with my work. It wasn't that. They didn't need me to be doing anything else. They had people in other roles fulfilling that, and they had the lawyers doing the lawyering. So in a way, they didn't need me to develop anymore. So I just sort of had to keep going and just get on with it, really. So that wasn't enough for me.
And what was the point at which you decided, I can't carry on doing this?
So I was really lucky in that I worked very closely with one particular woman who I love and still get on with very well. She was my boss at the time, Hazel, and she was going on mat leave, and she was going to be away for 6 months. And I thought, this could be a really good opportunity for me. I'm going to ask if I can take some time off, because I knew I would be sort of probably at quite a loose end when she wasn't there. And I asked, and they let me take 6 months off as well. So I was able to have a sabbatical and really assess my options. And I thought the best thing to do in that 6 months was to go to France. So the background to that is that my family had already moved here. My parents had taken early retirement to France, and my sister had moved here. In fact, before my mum and dad got here, she had already moved out and was living the dream. And I always felt a little bit left out, like I was the only one left back in the UK. And I'd missed out on, the birth of my nieces, and I'd missed out on, big birthdays and things like this. And I thought, I'll go and spend some time in France. So I had those 6 months to explore what it was like to be in a completely new place. And I loved it, Jeremy. So that was the point that I decided to leave.
So apart from going to live in France for those 6 months, what other plans did you have at the start of those 6 months in terms of what you were going to do with that time? I presume that you thought at the end of it you'd be going back into your old job.
Well, I did think that, but I also knew it was going to be an opportunity to have time away and to really think about what I wanted to do. And I think I knew somewhere deep down that there was no going back. I knew there was a reason, but I knew it was the start of a change, let's put it that way. And I didn't quite know what that was going to look like. I don't think I thought I would move to France permanently. I don't think that was ever in my mind. I thought I would come back after the 6 months and find a different job maybe, or maybe try and get into, my degree is in languages with interpreting and translating. So I thought I'll maybe try and really push to do more of that. I did not see myself moving here permanently. And I did go back to my job. I fulfilled what I was meant to do after the 6 months. I did the right thing, and I came back to Edinburgh, and I restarted my work. But that was such a good thing to do, in fact, because I could really see the contrast and being back in the office again at my desk after 6 months. So, just this amazing life in France. I knew that it was the right choice to leave. So not long after that, I handed in my notice.
Out of interest, how long was that?
I came back in January 2013, and I handed my notice in the beginning of April that year.
And when you handed in your notice, what were your plans at that point? What were you going to do?
I was moving back to France. By that point, I'd made my mind up. So during the time I was in France, and once I got back, I probably didn't have to go back, but I wanted to do the right thing. I probably could have stayed on in France, but I had unfinished business. I had to go back and get my house sold and see people and, and have the last few months there. And then I finally left. In fact, it just came up in my memories the other day that it was 10 years to the day that I was driving all the way down through Scotland, England, and getting the tunnel across in my little Clio with, absolutely packed full of stuff, and leaving for good this time in May 2013.
Okay, so you've made the decision, I'm going to move to France. Was there at that point a decision, I'm going to move to France and this is what I'm going to do when I get there?
Absolutely none. Absolutely no idea. But I've talked about this a few times because most people cannot believe that I made that choice with no idea about what I was going to do. But I have always worked, and I've always turned my hand to pretty much anything. I knew I had a good level of French. My master's is in French. And I knew I would find something. So I wasn't too worried. And I have to say I was in a privileged position. I had a buffer. My parents were in France. My sister was there. I wasn't going to stay, I wasn't completely on my own. So I had that buffer. So that was very, very lucky. And I recognized that. But I also knew that, I know I'm an independent person and I knew I would find something quickly, whatever that may be. So I wasn't too worried about that, which may seem crazy, but yeah.
So how much runway did you have? I mean, had you set yourself a time limit from the point that you arrived in France by which you were going to have made a decision what you were going to do next and started making moves in that direction?
I didn't give myself a timeline, really. I mean, the other part of the story is there was a love story in the middle of all this. So I met my now husband at the very end of that 6-month period when I was in France. So when I came back, I mean, he wasn't the reason I came back to France to live, but he was one of the reasons. And he was in work, and I sort of knew that I would, that we were going to move in together, and that there was that buffer as well, that I wasn't completely, I wasn't stressing about finding something straight away. But what I will say is that I was desperate to work because I knew I didn't want to be twiddling my thumbs either. So I didn't feel pressure from the outside. It was more of an internal thing of I want to be independent myself and find something. So when you're talking about a runway, it was a sort of self-imposed thing, really, that I knew I would find something. And I was confident that I would do so. So yeah, wasn't really worried.
So talk to me about the process there. So finding what you were going to do next and starting it.
So I met lots of different expats when I moved here, and still do. And one of my very close friends now, Tracy, she is an executive coach. And she asked me to support her with some admin and various things with her business. And I thought, oh yeah, I could do that, with my experience, secretarial experience and that type of thing. That would be something I could do. The whole virtual assistant thing was just starting, it was becoming a much bigger thing. So I learned a little bit about that and said, yeah, I mean, I can do that remotely. That's no problem. So that is where it really began, because I started to support her in a small way, but it was so, so valuable to her. She had been running her business on her own. I was able to book all her travel and, work on reports and presentations and things for her. And that was really the start of a light bulb moment for me, because I realized I could support more people. This could be a thing. And that's when the virtual assistant business was born.
So the work you did for Tracy, it wasn't sufficient to support full-time work. She didn't need that much. It was just a few hours here and there a week sort of thing.
Exactly. It was very piecemeal. And again, that was about me learning how to run a business. So when I did take on more clients, I set up retainers and things like that so that I knew I would have a more steady income every month. And I learned so much about running my own business by doing that. So I've a lot to thank Tracy for.
And where were your other clients coming from?
I had no clue how to market myself to begin with, Jeremy. So I did a short course in marketing via LinkedIn. So I talked about my experience, and I think that really helped me. Having a secretarial background helped with the virtual assistant stuff, because I know quite a lot of people set up as virtual assistants and don't have any background. They think it's easy, it's just admin, they can do it. And actually, I'm not saying it's rocket science, but there's a lot more to it. So I think the fact that I had a really good background in admin helped, and I filled my client list within a couple of weeks. I was very, very lucky.
What was the source of the sources of these clients?
All through LinkedIn, and all because I chose a very specific niche. Well, because I was working with Tracy, who was an executive coach, I really loved the work that she did, and it really inspired me, and I enjoyed helping her because I learned about the work that she did. And so I was very specific in my LinkedIn marketing, talking to a specific person. I wanted to work with female executive coaches. So I wasn't speaking to everybody, I was just speaking to one particular person, and I was very clear about that. So I was getting leads every other day I couldn't believe it. I learned these few tricks about, how to talk about your business, and it worked. I'm not saying that it didn't work straight away, because I didn't know really about how to do that. Before I did that little course, I was telling everybody I could do everything, and I wasn't really on LinkedIn. I was trying to do it on Facebook, and it's just all a bit of a muddle. So the course really helped me to learn how to speak to one particular ideal client and tell them how you can help them. And once I did that, it just changed everything.
So was this about increasing your presence generally on LinkedIn, posting about yourself, putting stuff about the sorts of services you offered, or was it more proactive in the sense of finding prospective ideal clients and making direct contact with them?
I made no direct contact with anybody. The only thing I did was I added connections, people who looked interesting to me and people who were in my ideal client base. I added those people, but I didn't message them directly or anything. I just asked to connect with them. And then I put out content about, about the type of people I help, about how I help them. I was really specific about the services that I offered as well, and how much it was, and that it was a retainer, and that it was X amount. And I was just really, really specific, and that really helps, I think, sort the wheat from the chaff as well, because you only get really specific leads then. People who come to you and say, I've seen your post, I know how much it is, can I have it? So I think the more specific you can be on LinkedIn, it's really important.
When you were sending your connection requests, were you personalizing them so that people had some context about why they would connect with this otherwise apparently random person? Because, speaking for myself, I'll get LinkedIn requests sometimes from people I don't know, and it's the standard, hello, I'd like to join your LinkedIn network. It's the stock email you get when it's not been tailored. And I usually look at that and I go, and who are you? Delete. So what were you doing to tell people that it was in their interests to make the connection with you?
That's so interesting, Jeremy. So you are definitely not my ideal client in the nicest possible way. So the reason I'm saying that is because generally, if you get a message from someone, it will be a copy and paste, or it will be something that somebody's written to try and eventually sell you something. That is what I think LinkedIn is for, really, what it's becoming more and more. And what I do is specifically tailor my headline to be obvious that I would be somebody would want to connect with, if that makes sense. So I made my headline very clear in that I helped female executive coaches, so that when I went to connect with them and they saw who the connection request was coming from, they thought, oh, that's someone who could maybe help me. And the majority of people hit accept. So, and the people who didn't are people that I suppose, how can I justify this? No, I don't know if I need to justify it, but I got a full client list within 2 weeks via LinkedIn. So people were obviously accepting my connection requests with no message, with absolutely no idea who I was. But then they connected with me and they got to see my content. They got to see that I was genuine. I posted lots of video content, lots of behind the scenes stuff. And it's about building up trust and rapport in that way, connecting with people and then talking to them maybe about something that they have posted, so that it becomes more of an actual conversation, rather than starting out with a sort of generic message that doesn't always ring true, I don't feel. So I do feel that although maybe it's just a connection request for someone, most people who accept will then get to see who I really am, if that makes sense. And it worked. It worked.
How did you come up with your content strategy? So what to post, what sort of things to post, whether it was text, whether it was video, frequency, cadence, that kind of thing?
That was, again, thanks to the training that I did. It was something that I learned through that. So it was, the cadence, I think, was 4 times a day. What was a video, story post, a call to action post, and there was one other one which I can't remember now. But I was pretty much posting at least twice a day with some sort of a variation on all those types of content. So a call to action would be just basically saying, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how much it is, here's how to contact me. A story post would be more, a little bit about showing who I am via a story or a case study, or, I would maybe talk about my past experience or about my current clients and what I'm doing to help them. And then just peppering in different things, like a bit of about behind the scenes. Sometimes I would, take a video of me down by the river here in my little village in France, and people got to know me that way, which I think it's just a lot more genuine than a sort of cold connection request with the text is bound to be sort of salesy, I think. It helps people to take the time to get to know you on their own terms, so they have a chance to watch you in the background. And I still sometimes get messages from people saying, oh, I saw your content, I really liked it, can we have a call?
Even if I wasn't working at all, the idea of producing that amount of content to post 4 times a day just sounds quite overwhelming. I mean, was this always original content every day, or did you recycle stuff? I mean, how did you just produce that amount that you could post that many times a day?
I think when you're starting off, you have time, and you also have an impetus of, I want work, I need work, whatever that may be. What is your reason for being on there? And that can very much help push you to create content. There are so many resources online to help you think about what you can write in your content, to help you. If you have experience, if you're working on a day-to-day basis, you've got plenty of content there already. You've content all around you all the time. It's quite easy. And if you're very disciplined about it and, spend half an hour every day, write 4 posts or take a quick video, and, call to action posts are simple. It's just 3 or 4 lines. You can definitely recycle those. But I think in the beginning, because I wanted the work so much, and because I didn't have a full client list immediately, it was easy. I had the time to do it. Fast forward into, having a full client list, and you don't need to keep up that rhythm whatsoever. You can just keep maybe posting one thing a day or once every other day, just to keep your LinkedIn a little bit alive. I definitely didn't need to keep that up for a very long time.
Once you had a client, were they essentially in many circumstances, a client for life? So you would basically keep on working for them?
So the very first person who contacted me via LinkedIn was on day 3 of that training course. I couldn't believe it, Jeremy. I thought it was a hoax. I thought it was the person who was running the training course who planted somebody to make you think the training course had worked, because I just couldn't believe that this would even happen. I remember talking to my husband and him saying, what? No, it can't be real. It was just so crazy to me that this could work. And this person is still one of my clients to this day. So 6 years later, we still have a call every 2 weeks. I still help her with the running of her business, and now her second business baby. And it's been very much the same with all those clients to begin with. I pretty much have a handful of them that are still there, still here to this day, which is just fantastic.
You remember the name of the course, and do you know if it still exists?
I know the name of the lady who ran the course, and I'm not quite sure if her course still runs in the same way. It was a challenge. So her name is Helen Pritchard, and she runs a LinkedIn challenge. I think she stopped it for a while, but it's back on again. If you look her up, she's definitely on LinkedIn. She is the LinkedIn lady. She will say this herself. She is very much Marmite. So you either love her methods or you don't. And I will credit all of this, that first business, the success I had initially was via Helen, because she taught me those methods and taught me how to be genuine. And I was actually going to be I'd put an application for a job here, because when I first decided I would run my virtual assistant business and I was working with Tracy, I was trying to market myself and it was not working. And I had actually gone for a full-time job. I'd put in an application, and the interview was the Friday of that week. So the week that I did the LinkedIn challenge with Helen. And as I said earlier, the first person who contacted me was on the 3rd day of that LinkedIn training. on the Wednesday. And by the Friday, I'd had another 2 calls with another 2 executive coaches. So I didn't go to the job interview on the Friday.
That's amazing.
It was crazy, absolutely crazy and fantastic and exhilarating and wonderful and all those things. It just all came together.
Let's fast forward to the time where you've now got this full book of clients, but you're starting to think about starting new businesses. What's causing those thoughts to bubble up?
I had my youngest little boy, September 2021. And just before I went off on mat leave with him, I think I finished up 4 days before I gave birth to Finn, because, that's the way it is when you run your own business. You're just in it all the time. And I was so busy, and the handover and all these things. And then he was born 4 or 5 days later, and I had time, Jeremy, for the first time in a long time. My clients knew that I was going to be away for at least 4 months, and I had the headspace to think, albeit with a newborn baby, but there were many nights where I was awake for a long time, so I had plenty of time to think, and I wasn't thinking about anybody else's tasks or business or anything. And that was fantastic for me, because it's not that I don't love my VA work. I still have clients for that business, and I love it. But as you said in the intro, it became very much like my 9 to 5, back at my desk every day, working for other people and their businesses, and not really finding room for growth. I didn't ever want to run an agency model. I didn't want to have that type of business model for my VA business. I wanted me to be the person in contact with my clients. That was really important to me. So this time off allowed me to think about how I could maybe scale down that other business slightly and work on doing something new. And the new businesses were born during that time after my youngest baby was born.
So aside from the time aspect, what was it that you were looking for your new businesses to do for you that your VA business wasn't?
I was watching lots of other business owners that I was working with be creative in their ideas, and I couldn't do that because I was basically recreating what they wanted me to create for them, if that makes sense. So they had an idea for the business, and I had to maybe create some content or help them with marketing. And because it became, over the years, the VA business has changed from doing very basic admin now to a lot more marketing and helping with, with content creation and that type of thing. Although I was having a creative outlet in that way, it was for other people, and I really had a bug in me, this thing in me that wanted to create and do something a little bit different. So I think that was it. I had a creative release. I had to get it out some way and find the time to do that. And that's what I struggled with before, because I've always loved food, and I've always loved, creating and doing different things. But it's, when you run a business, it's hard to find the time. So I wanted to create space to do that, to actually make it a thing that I had to do. And I thought, well, if I make it into a business, I'll have to do it.
And why specifically, or why 2 businesses? Because that seems like quite a lot to start with. And why specifically these 2 businesses?
So the foodie thing was the first idea, and that has been a thread all through my life as well. So the French side of things has been there. I've always loved the French language, and I've always loved France. We came on holiday here ever since I was tiny. And food has played a massive role because, my mom was a great cook. My gran, especially, I spent a lot of time with her as a child, and she taught me the magic of putting a few simple ingredients together and getting cake. What's more magical than that for a small child? She was a massive influence, and I've just always loved food and cooking. And I mean, I have memories of me, standing in my kitchen pretending to front my own cookery program as a kid. So it's always been there, and I have wanted to do it for a long time. And I think COVID really showed me the power of doing stuff online. I always thought that if I was going to do something foodie, I would have to do it in person. I'd have to run my own cafe, or, I didn't realize until COVID, I hadn't thought that I could do something with food online. So in one sense, COVID was a great thing for me amongst all the awfulness of it. It allowed me to see the possibilities, and I decided to start my Food in France thanks to that in one part.
It strikes me that teaching other people to cook, it's not a particularly new idea. Doing it remotely is not a particularly new idea. I mean, leaving aside the internet, there's been cookery shows on TV for goodness knows how long, probably almost as long as there's been TV for. What stopped you from kind of thinking, oh no, this is already a saturated market, I don't have anything new which I can offer here?
Because it's the same, you could apply that to any business, Jeremy. You could say, oh well, there's thousands, tens of thousands of hairdressers in the UK. Why would I be a hairdresser? Well, because A, there's need for it, and B, you're going to be different from all the other hairdressers, you're unique. So without wanting to sound too cheesy, but yes, I knew also I had something a little bit different because of where I am. There's this whole, I'm in Provence. I'm in a country that's known for its gastronomy and, amazing, gorgeous food and restaurants and produce. So I knew I had that, which set me apart a little bit. I've got the language and I've got 2 kids. So I knew I could talk to people about, feeding small children. And, there's just so many things that I knew that I could add to it. I wanted to talk to local producers here and do little interviews with people. And, I knew it wasn't just going to be a cookery program. There was going to be much more to it. And the membership aspect of it fascinated me because I thought, well, I can get people in and we can add to that. So people join the My Food in France membership, and there's a cookery class once a month, but also there's a whole vault of recipes and cookery content and recorded content in there of, interviews and just lots of fun stuff. And there's the community aspect of us just chatting in the group in general as well, which adds to it. So it's definitely not just one thing, there's much more to it. It becomes a sort of more rounded offering, I think.
Another aspect which has come up on this podcast a couple of times is the dangers of following your passion. So, there's that people often say, oh yes, follow your passion, do what you love, that kind of thing. But there's a difference between doing something which you love doing and doing it as a hobby, and then it becoming a business and people losing the passion of doing something when it becomes something on which livelihood depends. So is that something that you've had to navigate? And if so, how have you done so?
Very much so. And that's a great question and a great thing to think about if you are wanting to start your own business. I'm lucky because I did have the VA business there. So it wasn't such a gamble for me to start this new thing. So I would say to anybody who's thinking of following their passion is make sure you have that buffer in place. Try it out. If you're already in a full-time position, try and do this little extra thing on the side and see how it goes. And if you love it, then think about exploring it full-time. But if it becomes something that's difficult or that sucks any joy out of it for you because you hate the marketing aspect or you hate the actual, I remember someone saying to me, oh, this is a great idea, but have you actually tried to do a class over Zoom yet? Have you tried to do it? And I was like, oh my goodness, no, I better try that. And I did my first Zoom class and I was so full of excitement and so exhilarated when it finished. I was like, wow, that was amazing. And everybody who did the class loved it. It was fantastic. And I just thought, right, no, I'm so glad I tried it because it just has shown me that I do love it. So, but just, yes, be very careful about that because, whenever it's your business, it's all consuming and, try it out. Try it before you buy it.
So if you compare your businesses as they are now with what you'd like them to be in 5 years, 10 years time, whatever it might be. I mean, what does it look like at the moment and what would you like it to look like?
For my best friend in France, I can't wait until more people find out about this, because I see huge expats groups online. So, 30K people in the one group, and as I said earlier, it's very much all to do with admin, which is very useful. And, it's really important. There's lots of practical stuff you have to find out when you move country. But I can't wait for the point when my group hits 30K and, I can do lots more to support people with the move and with life here in general, and become known a little bit more as the person who helps English speaking expats in France. And for the My Food in France side of things, I mean, the dream is to have hundreds of people in a cookery class, Jeremy, from all over the world. That would be my ideal thing. I'd love to do a cookbook someday, all the classic things that you see online chefs doing, that would be the ideal. But for the time being, I love how it is. I have a small family, so our young family, I've got 2 small children, and for the time being, it's just great to have 2 businesses, well, 3 really, because I still have my VA clients that I can give time to and nurture, and have them as quite small groups at the moment to spend lots of time in there and learn what works, what doesn't work, what I need to do more of, what I want to do more of, and watch them grow and grow and grow. So just really exciting. So exciting and fun doing a thing that I love.
And if you'd known then, and you can choose when then is, what you know now, what might you have done differently?
That is such a good question. I don't want to say that I have no regrets, but I am going to say it, because everything that I've done in the path that I've taken has led to this moment. So I would love to say that, I'd never had to run the VA business and I could have just done the cookery stuff straight away. But I needed to do that to learn how to run my own business. I needed to have a viable learning curve and, and a successful business to know how it works, so that I could go on. I needed to help other people with their marketing so that I could learn how to do it for myself for these new businesses. I really do think everything happens for a reason. And I was taken on this path to help me get to this point. And oh my goodness, I hate what I'm saying, but it's just true, It sounds so cheesy, but I do think it's happened for a reason, and I'm glad. If anything, I would have liked to have got to this point sooner, maybe exploring the creative side of things, and had the guts to try it out a little bit sooner. But in the grand scheme of things, what's a few years?
I love that attitude. It's something that I sometimes catch myself thinking, I wish I'd started down this journey 10 years ago rather than 3 or 4 years ago. And then you just catch yourself, well, you are where you are, and you move forward from there, and that's literally all you can do about it. Along the way, have there been any particular tools, resources, books, people? You mentioned the LinkedIn course, but anything else which has particularly helped you on your journey and which you'd like to recommend to people?
So yes, definitely check out Helen Pritchard and her LinkedIn challenge. She, I do often credit her as changing my life and helping me with the marketing. I have a client who does a lot of work on mindset and personal development. She's a coach called Alison Smith. She talks about a process that she created called landscaping your life. If you look up the hashtag landscaping your life on LinkedIn, she's on YouTube, and she also has a Landscaping Your Life podcast. And it's very much all about using nature as a coach. And that's really helped me for lots of different things over the years in my personal life and in business. And I think, I'm sure probably lots of people say this, but the James Clear book, the Atomic Habits book, is something that's helped me in business. So if you haven't checked that out and you're a business owner, it's something that's helped me just order my day, not just for business priorities, but family and health and everything. It is probably one of the best business books out there.
It is a cracking book. It's one I read quite a few years ago, and I think I need to dust it off and revisit it just to remind myself of some of the concepts in there. Where would you like people to go if they want to find you, connect with you, find out more about what you're about?
You can come and join the foodie group. There's a free version of the My Food in France group over on Facebook. Just look up My Food in France with Judith Keys. And there's the My Best Friend in France group as well. Just check that out. You'll find me over on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn too, so that's another place you can come and find me. And don't worry, you don't need to send me a message with your connection request.
There's always links to those in the show notes. Judith, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. That was great.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that interview with Judith Keys. I'm often struck by how many people think that their life is going to get better if they have an easy life. They just want a job where they can go through the motions and not really have to think about it. And yes, I'm not ruling that out. I'm not saying that that isn't necessarily right for some people. But it's quite interesting in Judith's case that she said that that was a signal to her that she needed to make a change, that the job had become too easy. She'd done all the development that she could, and there was just no way for her to progress or move forwards. And I think it partly comes down to interest. What is it about a job which is keeping it interesting for you, that's keeping you motivated? Different people are motivated by lots of different things. The question is, what is it that's going to motivate you? Also, for those of you who either have started a business or who are thinking about doing so, I hope that conversation about LinkedIn was quite useful. It was certainly very interesting for me. Judith clearly has found considerable success finding new clients through LinkedIn using a method which she found in a free online challenge. As always, you'll find a full set of show notes with a transcript, a summary of what we've talked about, and links to the resources Judith mentioned, all at changewhatlife.com/159. That's changewhatlife.com/159. Now, if you're listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts, you've really got no excuse not to leave a review. Reviews are a great way of letting people know that the show is worth listening to, so please take your phone out your pocket, leave a quick review. 5 stars would be brilliant if you feel it's worth it, and let other people know that there's some content here which they're really going to find worthwhile. In 2 weeks' time, we've got a great interview with someone who, when their business nearly fell apart, they seriously considered going back to employed life. So what did they do? Well, you'll have to subscribe to the show if you haven't already so you don't miss that episode, and I can't wait to see you then. Cheers.